Toddlers, I'm Jade and I'm a speech and language pathologist. I'm excited to share with you this video that I made and put together on how I taught my baby letter sounds and symbols. And I'll have different activity ideas for you, as well as some tips that I think are really helpful in this process. For reference, my daughter was able to identify 18 different letter symbols right at 18 months, and she was able to identify 7 different Chinese characters, and she had an expressive vocabulary of over 110 Chinese words and over 20 English words. I'm going to go ahead and share with you a video clip of my daughter Lena identifying some letter sounds. If you want to see the full video, I do have that linked in the description box, so you could take a look there. But for time's sake, I'm not going to put in the full clip.
K, k, k. Yeah, Lena. 这个呢？ Slot. 这个呢？ Lena. Fan. 跳。妈。这个呢？ Go. G for go. Open. Hi. 还有什么？妈妈找。Oh, here we go. 娃娃。W for娃娃。
With this process, I actually first began by using American Sign Language with my baby girl. So I had been using multiple signs for using like core words and functional communication type of words with her. But I realized that when I was singing the ABC song, I could totally just insert hand signs in there too. So what I did was I signed each letter as I was singing the ABC song, and I noticed that Lena was really watching both my lips and also looking at my hands when I was making these symbols. I decided to move towards teaching the letter sounds directly. So for instance, instead of just singing like A, B, C, D, I started to show her the letter sounds that would go with each symbol. So with A, I would go, A is for apple. I showed her the sign and then paired it with the sound. And after I did that enough times, I realized I could start using the actual symbol with her and pair it with the sound. So that's what I did. From there, I began to teach her the different letters. Let's go ahead and look at some of those activities. For practicing letters, you are welcome to use any type of material you want. I've seen wooden, chunky puzzle pieces of letters. There are also, as you see here, magnetic letters. These are Melissa and Doug magnetic letters, and you can also get different types like from the dollar store, and they work just fine too. I personally like magnetic letters because you can stick them onto a cookie tin like you see here, and that makes it a little fun for little ones to just, drop on, pull off, etc. Of course, you can also use flashcards if you want, or you can write down the letters as you practice and work on them. So to begin, you start off by picking a sound that your child can comfortably make. So for instance, if your child can make the sound, you can use A as one of the learning targets. My child, for instance, so she cannot produce the R sound yet. She can't produce a very clear R sound. So because of that, I am choosing not to work on the R sound first. You'll want to pick sounds, again, that your child can produce. So that means you're not necessarily going by the order of the alphabet. After you've selected your learning target, you're going to pick a word that your child can associate with this letter sound. It will need to be a word that starts with this letter sound. So something that starts with ah, ah, ah. And it needs to be a word that you've used with your child, preferably one that's very highly frequently used. So a high frequency word. My little girl knows what an apple is. Now, we've been mostly speaking Mandarin at home, but apple is one of the few English words that she does know. So I am going to use that word apple for this letter sound. The way I would teach it would be A is for apple, ah, ah, ah. And I normally do it with signs first, so I would show A is for apple, ah, ah, ah. But you can also, if you're not doing signs, you can just show the symbol. If you're using another sound, like when I did B with my daughter, she didn't know a lot of words starting with B in English, but she knew Baba, which meant dad in Chinese. So we used B is for Baba, ba, ba, ba. And you can continue on like that. So I recommend teaching one letter at a time. Try not to overwhelm your little one, for sure. When you're teaching one, you can show them the sound first, let them explore it. If it's some kind of manipulative, like a chunky puzzle piece or a magnetic letter, let them feel it and hold it and, put it around, stick it on things. You can use one-step directions for one single letter at first. For instance, give me A or give me ah, ah, ah. And you can even hide it or put it to the side and go, where's ah, ah, ah? And they can go find it. This will work well if you're focusing on just one letter sound at a time. So remember, don't overwhelm your little one, especially in the beginning, and focus on just one. Now, we can do some silly things with this, like you can say, put ah, ah, ah on your head. And you can say, oh, look, A is on my hand, or A is on my arm. And you can practice with both the letter sound and the letter name. When you're working your way up and your child knows more than one letter sound, you can start asking them questions like putting out more than one target and asking them, give me ah, 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 or show me ah, ah, ah. Once they're able to receptively, like let's say follow directions like find or give me or point to, after understanding comes expressing. You can go ahead and put down the target letter, and now we change the question to be, which sound does this make? Or A sounds like, etc. And what I just used there was called a carrier phrase, where you give the first part of the sentence and have the child fill in the rest. Remember, if you're using carrier phrases, like A makes the sound, then you'll want to give a good pause. And you'll definitely want to have used this phrase frequently enough for your little one to understand what you're trying to go for. So for instance, you may have been practicing a lot by saying, A sounds like ah, ah, ah. So when you're asking your child to express that, you'll use the same phrase that you've been using, the one they're familiar with. A sounds like, and your child fills in. I'm going to go ahead and share some additional tips now. So let's stay tuned to hear some of these helpful tips for learning letter sounds. All right, so here are some helpful tips. Tip number 1, no need to go in the order of ABCs. So choose the letter sounds that your child can actually make. For example, Lena couldn't produce the short E sound well, so I skipped over E. I picked out sounds that were easy for her to make. Tip number 2, you'll want to find associations for each sound that are relevant to your child. This one is important because it also helps with the memory for learning. Make sure each word you associate goes with the phonetic sound. So for instance, S is sloth for Lena because it's one of Lena's favorite bedtime stuffies. So I would say S is for sloth. Tip number 3 is to introduce things bit by bit. Now, you'll want to work on one new letter sound at a time so that it's easily digestible for your little one. Too many will be overwhelming. Tip number 4 is make it child-led. What I mean by that is to make sure the activity is interesting and something that your child wants to participate in. It's important that we don't turn it into a chore or a task. It needs to be enjoyable and fun for your little one to want to remain engaged. If it's not, then I highly recommend following your child's lead and moving on to something of greater interest to him or her. Number 5 is to go at your child's pace. So don't expect results overnight. I sang the ABC song for many weeks and I paired it with signs. I wasn't very consistent about it in the beginning, and only when Lena was about 16 months old did I begin to introduce the actual letter symbols to her. Since introducing the first symbol, which is letter A in our case, it's taken a lot of repetition for her to get to 18 symbols. Tip number 6 is that consistency is good, but it's not required. So don't worry, don't freak out if you miss a day or even a week of practice. We're not drill sergeants and our babies are not robots. So if you practice with them sometimes, great. If you don't, that's totally okay too. Go with the flow and see what fits into your routine and schedule. In reality, I struggle with consistency and I sometimes remember to ask Lena if she wants to practice her letters on a daily basis, but other times I go a week or 2 without bringing it up. And last tip here is to remember not to give yourself or your baby pressure. Remind yourself that this is simply exposure to another area of learning in your baby's day of rich and stimulating experiences, enjoying other toys and activities. But this is just one thing, and at this age, play, exploration, and having a healthy and trusting attachment with the adult are the most important for your baby. So try not to lose sight of that. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that my tips and process will be helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to answer them. All right, thank you so much, and have a good one. Bye now.